pathway. We have our juniors, the under 18 guys at the top, under 15s, under 13s, and we get into the pre-aspire guys. And this is the 10 to 12 year old bracket that we work with. So we work closely with Roman and the other national team guys, and hopefully those guys progress into our mini cadets. So we're trying to smooth that pathway through and sort of lay the foundations there. So this is what I'll touch on today. Again, some of the stuff I present is what we do with our cadets as well. But again, in the model that I work from, everything's interchangeable and it progresses through quite nicely. So hopefully this makes sense. This is the youth physical development model, and all it does is it takes you through the various stages of development. So from childhood, from here to adolescence to adulthood, they progress through, the model sort of adapts with it. So what this model entails is it touches on the growth of the athletes. So there'll be a period of steady growth here. They might have their peak height velocity, which is the period where they'll grow the most during the year. So which is when we tend to see the kids that were here, they come in next week, they're about here overnight. So this kind of accounts for that. It takes you through the adaptations that they might be going through. So is it a motor learning sort of neural development, or is it hormonal? Are they starting to develop muscle that way? So this kind of progresses through as they get older. We'll then come on to FMS, which is fundamental movement skills, sport-specific skills, and then physical qualities that I'll break them down into individually for you all. So for the 10 to 12-year-old athlete, they kind of fall in this little bit here. If you look at this chart, I know there's quite a lot going on, I apologise, but if you look at the bigger the letters and the bigger the words, the more emphasis they get during that sort of phase of development. So with boys, so this is a male model, our 10 to 12-year-old boys, they might just be hitting peak height velocity towards the back end of this spectrum here, so it's just worth being aware of. For girls, just bear in mind that the blocks are going to change. It obviously shifts to the left. So what this means is that boys will go through peak height velocity, so they have the greatest change in growth around 14 years old. Okay, this can happen from 12 to 16-year-olds. So it's kind of a big bracket. Some kids will develop quickly, earlier, and some might take a little bit longer to develop. With girls, they'll develop probably earlier, potentially around the age of 12, but this can be anywhere from as early as 10 to 15. The rest of this presentation is purely geared towards males, as this is what we work with here. So I do apologise, any of you working with females, please just bear this in mind that it might happen a few years earlier, so these are some considerations to bear in mind. The FMS, or the fundamental movement skills, are just basic athletic development, so can you walk, run, skip, hop, lunge, okay? But kids nowadays spend a lot of time on their phone, on their laptops. They don't really get out and play as much. So part of my job now is to try and create environments for them to play, to develop these skills that aren't, necessarily being developed because they're playing PlayStation, they're on their iPhones, they're watching TV most of the day. Again, different populations, you might be fortunate enough to have the luxury of your kids playing outside. When it's 50 degrees here in summer, the last thing our boys want to do is go and run around outside. So what this looks like is our warm-up might occasionally get set up like this, and this is just an assault course to expose the boys to some different movements. So this is a video of some of the pre-aspire boys just finishing off. They've got some jumping, some hopping, there's some crawling, some running. Okay, this is just part of the warm-up that we might do before they go and play table tennis. It's something that you might already do or might want to take away and incorporate. And it's just a fun way to get them moving, learning different patterns, but equally warming them up for a session. Probably the most important one, sort of, for me as a strength and conditioning coach and you as coaches, is the sport-specific skill. I like to consider this the merging of the technical coaching and the physical coaching, okay? My job is not to make them stronger and bigger and faster in the gym. My job is to help the coach make better table tennis players. And hopefully by approaching this sort of area, we can achieve that. So this is some of the work that Dr. Glynn presented last year, I believe. And just looking at some sport-specific skills, okay? So you've got your lateral jump, pivoting, linear jump, and linear step for various shots, okay? And the challenge for me is not to necessarily replicate this completely, but to expose the boys to this potentially in the warm-up or in certain sessions that will then help them carry it over onto the table. So here, you can see a linear step, just probably a return of the service. And here, it's not exactly the same pattern, but it's a similar movement, and this is a game I'll show you a video of in a minute. But again, he's having to use a linear step. Here, again, you can see a lateral jump, and this is a team game of almost netball. You can see here a lateral jump trying to get into space to get the ball. And again, this comes into warm-up. It's a fun way to work on the skills, but to get them ready for a session as well. This is just a snippet of what it might look like. These are two of our junior boys, so obviously a little bit more competent than the others. I'll just play that again. So again, a little bit of movement, linear step, quick feet, and ideally they play this and they can get some decent rallies, and it's a nice little serve, and the boys enjoy it. So this is really what I focus on the most, is the physical qualities here. And again, for the 10 to 12-year-old range, we can see here through the bigger letters that mobility, agility, speed, power and strength are the main focus here. It doesn't mean we go away from working on the fundamental movement skills or the sport-specific skills, they're still there. There's just more of an emphasis on the physical qualities alongside the technical coaching. Okay, so mobility. If we spend 2 to 4 hours a day, potentially even longer in this position here, you know, at some point these muscles are going to get tight, we're going to get tight here, and there's the potential for overuse injuries with these athletes, especially if they're starting quite young and playing all the way through to seniors. You know, at some point they're probably going to get injured. So my job is to try and stop them getting injured or to limit that potential. Okay. So mobility and flexibility is here, is trying to give them a range of motion through the joints that they need to. And if they're going to spend 2 hours training in this position, my job is to try and get them into this position, get them loose, get them stretched out so they don't get injured and they can spend more time at the table. Agility, again, it's a fast-paced sport with a lot of lateral movement. My job is to work alongside the speed of how quickly can they move to one side of the court to play a shot and potentially get back to the other side of the court to return the shot and hopefully win the point. So we'll do some work around that. Again, moving quickly, stopping, changing direction, coming back the other way. Power and strength equally play a part in speed and agility. Okay? If I've got no strength and I come here, it takes me a long time to stop, I can't get back that way. If I can get here and come back, there's a greater chance that I'll be in position to return the shot and potentially win the point. So I work on all of these simultaneously, alongside the coach as well. So here we'll just go through a general movement at the top. So this might be a skipping rope, just for a few minutes, just to get them warm. For our boys here, they'll come straight from class to table tennis. Usually they've been up quite early, they've prayed, they've been in lessons for a few hours. They need something just to wake them up and get them going. So we might have them skip. And again, for skipping, we might go double legs and single legs. In terms of being reactive at the table, it's a nice tool to get them going. You know, working on the stiffness of the ankles, we can go single legs, alternate, or we can go double unders, okay? And the more they practice this, the better they get. Here, again, because it's a lot of rotation, a lot of arm movements, we'll just go through a general range of motion, getting the muscles warm up. Again, coming back to the flexibility and mobility, we get that going early on. Okay? The activation stuff here we do. So what we'll use are these mini bands. Hopefully you've all seen them before. If not, they're here down the front at the end. Come and have a play. And again, because our boys are potentially going to be in this position for a long time, we try and get them feeling as strong as possible. We don't want them in a weak position here, so we'll use the bands to help them have to engage everything and feel strong in this position. Again, it's a good learning tool for them, but equally it helps with glute activation prior to the session. Okay. So what they might do here is it might be a single leg here with the band controlling, followed by a double leg. They might squat with the band, and equally for the upper body stuff, we'll throw in some activation work for them here of just having to resist here, or again, they can do some single arm work, all geared towards injury prevention. If we can have strong muscles around the shoulder, hopefully they're going to suffer less injuries throughout training. Okay. And then we'll take them through some stretches again, because mobility and flexibility is important. We'll have them do various stretches. So this one on the left here, it's a lower back stretch, it's a hip stretch and a quad stretch. Okay. Again, students sitting down all day, come into table tennis, we're trying to open them up, get them some flexibility. So through the hamstring, the hips, some rotation work and some core work through. And it will vary depending on the athletes you work with and how much time you've got, but this is kind of the procedure I'll go through there. Going back to the movement stuff, and again, as I said, our boys aren't very good at fundamental movement skills because they don't play outside as much. So we try and incorporate that in as much as possible. So they might jump laterally, so from side to side. And as I've said, we don't want guys here going slowly and collapsing. So they'll have to learn and go through this motion of sticking, being strong here, with the ability to jump back. As they get better at this, they might move quicker through, okay? Again, in the middle, we'll take them over hurdles. So it's a similar premise of jumping over on 2 legs, sticking. They might then go continuously and start getting a bit more reactive. And then as they get better at that, we'll go on to single leg work, where they'll go forwards. They'll also go side to side on different legs. And then some bound and some jumping. Again, most of this was made in collaboration with the coach. And my question to him is, what do you need to make these guys better table tennis players? And a lot of the work, what we were trying to focus on is coordination and being reactive, okay? So coordinating through ladders, they might have different patterns. Again, it's not trying to teach them to move in a pattern formation when they're at the table, because when they go through ladders, they look down. If you're looking down, you're not going to return the shot. But it gets them thinking, and they have to coordinate different patterns whilst they move. So hopefully when they go back to the table, they can play the shot, but move and coordinate very well. And then to finish, you've already seen the video of this game here. We might, if we have a large group, turn it into a team game, or do some reactive work where they might have to react to my clap, touch the cone, or play stuff in mud. It's just trying to be creative and think about games that get them moving, get them engaged, as this can be quite boring for them at time to time, so it's trying to freshen it up. So they go to the coaches ready, warm, and they've had a bit of fun in the process. Again, it doesn't always happen to look like this. Sometimes I might set out an obstacle course to challenge them, so it might look a little bit like this. So it's got a little bit of pushing to do, so it's got to actually do some work. And then it's got some coordination, some jumping, some rolling, some crawling throughout this. And we'll make it a competition, and there'll be times there's a bit of pressure. This is one of the older boys, so it actually looks pretty good. But it can just be a learning tool for them. And one of the great things about warm-ups like this is, as you can see, they're right next to the table. So they can finish this warm-up, grab a drink of water, and they're straight into the coaches. We don't lose any time here. And again, you're only limited by your imagination, so you can get quite creative with this. This is one of my colleagues, Dr. Fullinger, with the Pre-Aspire boys. And all he's doing here is working on some lateral movement with them. And he's just varying the cues he gives them. So it might be a left or a right. You might point left and they go left, point right, they go right. Depending on the age group, you can keep it quite simple. If you're working with more senior athletes, potentially you want to mix it up. So I might point left and say right, and they've got to react to it that way. Okay, so you get them thinking as well, not just going through the motions. So as I've said, you can give audio cues, visual cues, or you might mix it up and say, when I say table, you go to the right. So now they're having to think a bit more and make more decisions under a bit of pressure.